In a previous video, yet to be translated into English, I talked about myths in general. But in this video, I'd like to give you a concrete example. And the example that I've chosen is the mythical troll. But let's start by asking ourselves, what is a troll? Is it a human figure hiding a tail under her dress? Or is it an ugly and clumsy creature with warts on his nose? Or is it one of those annoying harassers that most of us have come across online? There are good reasons for all of these answers. It depends on who you're talking to. If you ask an elderly person in Sweden, they often think of cunning little creatures with tails, while the internet generation usually imagines an online troll. And right now, a kind of mythological revolution seems to take place, and the troll is one of the most fascinating examples of this transformation. They change in the transition from the fairy tale to the internet. But even so, they manage to retain the core of their identity. So let's step into the world of trolls and see how they have changed and how they still affect our lives even today. Men have argued that it's no longer the case that it's our rational decisions that determine the outcomes of our democratic elections. All of us are influenced by propaganda, half-truths, and distorted perspectives. And lately, some of you may have noticed that headlines about internet trolls are becoming all the more common. The modern and rational worldview has received a terrible blow. In the era of Twitter politics, truths are distorted, opinions turn into facts, and knowledge gives way to emotions. And out of the dark corners of the internet, one of our most feared and beloved legendary creatures appears: the troll. The trolls are lurking in our comment sections. They sweep through our feeds and distort, twist, and falsify the truth. They act in the shadows of anonymity and hide their true nature. Who knows what they write in the dark hours of the night? The parallels to the fairy tale troll are obvious. In Swedish folklore, they often disguise themselves as ordinary people living among us. They look like you and me. We can run into them on the street without even noticing. However, it's said that cats and dogs spit and growl when they come upon a troll. In our fairy tales, the animals seem to be able to sense the troll's distortion of creation. But we can only tell the identity of the troll by its tail under its clothes, because never forget, it's in the tail that the power resides. But the fairy tale trolls are not the only ones with tails. Influential online personalities are often required to take responsibility for what we in Sweden call their hateful tale, meaning their toxic Twitter following. In other words, their tale consists of smaller trolls that imitate and follow the leader. I like to imagine a great troll procession, where the largest troll leads the way, followed by hundreds, sometimes thousands of smaller trolls holding each other's tails. And this way of following the leader, a kind of imitation, has very interesting parallels in the Bible. But some of you might object to all of this. The trolling online doesn't come from our fairy tale trolls, but from the English fishing term trolling. The internet troll actually originated from a fishing technique where you're pulling a bait behind your boat. And just like the trawler, the early internet trolls threw out their provocative comments in the hope of getting a bite. But the association with fishing faded away fairly quickly, and the image of an online troll started to take shape in our imagination, in our collective representations. The similarities to the fairy tale troll became increasingly more obvious, and over time these two images finally merged and formed a new creation. And a few years ago I googled for images of trolls and sorted the findings by date, and it became very apparent to me how our conceptions of trolls have evolved and changed over the last 10-15 years. But if you do the same search nowadays, unfortunately, the only result you will get is pictures of DreamWorks movie trolls. So let's move on. In the world of fairy tales, the troll is usually a creature who prefers to live out in the wilderness, far away from the safe and secure cities of civilization. But they can also lie in wait along the forest roads or beneath bridges, as in the tale of Three Billy Goat Gruff. But the roads and infrastructure of our modern-day mythology takes us on a journey through internet. The modern troll lies in wait along the paths of our communication channels and on social media. Previously, they had their homes in holes in the ground, but the modern-day troll has moved into his mother's basement, where he can scribble his crafty posts without being disturbed by anyone. But there are actually many more parallels. A fascinating example is the disenchantment of the world that Western societies underwent during the Enlightenment. The scientific mind expelled the trolls of our deep forests to a world of mythology. They didn't belong in the age of reason, where you were only allowed to think inside the box. And today we can witness a similar process, a new kind of disenchantment, as governments around the world try to fight the trolls using the same kind of rational regulations and filters. But both scientists and legislators have to realize that trolls are tough little creatures. You can't get rid of them but by applying law and order. They thrive out in the margins of lawlessness. And perhaps this is why some people view the trolls simply as manifestations of chaos that seeks to create division among people. Personally, I think this is a naive simplification. A better way of describing the troll is as a distorted humanity, and I'll explain what I mean in just a minute. But first I'd like to address the issue of witchcraft or trollcraft, as it's called in Swedish, because there are many similarities between magic of the trolls and the trolling happening online. Nowadays, many of our associations of magic come to us through movies and games, where we get wizards throwing fireballs or magicians casting lightning. These kinds of themes show up in our myths as well, but the magic of the trolls usually has to do with trickery, shrewdness, and deception. And this is the kind of trollcraft that has returned from our mythical past. The arsenal of the internet troll consists of sarcasm, irony, a kind of inversion of the truth in order to gain power. And in the fairy tales, we find a similar pattern, where troll mothers replace human children with their own troll babies, so-called changelings. And every time the human mother feeds the changeling bread or meat, the troll mother feeds the human child snakes and thistles. She's imitating human behavior, but in an inverted way. In online meme culture, we see similar methods of magic. A striking example of this inversion was the meme Learn to Code. The background for this meme was all the coal mines and factories that were closing down in the United States, resulting in great unemployment among men, mostly middle-aged. And as this was happening, countless of articles were put out about how the fired miners should change their career paths and become programmers instead. In many cases, the journalists expressed a disdain for the working class, as they often do, but they would soon regret their ridiculing words. When the layoffs in the newspaper business started to happen, the online trolls saw their chance to get back at the journalists, giving them sarcastic advice in the form of learn to code memes aimed at the dismissed writers. This is the kind of a shrewd trickery that the modern trolls get a kick out of. But the myths of old teach us that magic always comes with a price. According to one version of the legend, the god Odin sacrificed one of his eyes in order to drink wisdom from Mimir's well, while others claim that he hung himself on the world tree to acquire knowledge of the powerful runes. It is said that he sacrificed himself for himself. And I believe that something very similar is happening when the modern troll acquires his online power. A while back I listened to an interview with a guy who used to belong to a trolling community, which very ironically called themselves a cult. And this is how he described his experience, and I quote, "The cult had all its ideas and everything. A lot of it was extremely ironic. That post-irony, where you stop being able to tell what's ironic from what's sincere. It's a magnificent manipulation tool, especially if you use it consciously. But do things ironically, and one day you wake up and they are no longer ironic." And that was actually what did the cult in. End quote. So magic always comes with a price, and it has its consequences. Because in reality, the trolls are people, just like you and me. They represent a distorted image of what humanity is meant to be. A bit like the reflected image of one of those funhouse mirrors at the amusement park. The troll is, in a way, mythology's way of describing what Christians call fallen humanity. In that sense, everyone is a troll. When we read about them in our folk tales, they remind us of ourselves, with the exception that they lack the human potential for beauty, virtue, and morality. This potential exists only in man. But despite our great potential for beauty, we nonetheless lie to one another, just like the trolls we are. We are deceitful, manipulative, and we distort the truth. We hide behind masks and aliases on the internet to avoid getting caught with the tail showing. To behave like a troll is to put on a mask. Because behind all the nasty comments there is a person, a masked self. And we often realize far too late that if we act as a troll, we eventually become one with the troll. You could almost say that we put on the troll, to use a biblical metaphor. To put on something, or someone, is something all humans do. As children, we imitate our parents, or the stars that we are attracted to. As teenagers, many of us have put on fake personas. And as adults, we wear masks in order to gain respect from people around us, or to hide our shortcomings. The reason for this behavior could simply be that it improves our chances of survival. I wouldn't know. But if we assume for a moment that this is the case, the Garden of Eden story offers us a fascinating insight to human nature. The very first book of the Bible depicts a garden in which God, man, and creation exist in harmony. It says that Adam and his wife were both naked, and they felt no shame. They didn't need clothes to conceal who they were, and neither did they hide their intentions by putting on masks. Adam and Eve were truly human, just as God had created them in his own image. But after the fatal incident with the serpent and the fruit by the tree, their view of the world changed. They suddenly realized that they were naked, and they ran for cover when God called for Adam. This is the beginning of the age of masks. The consequence of their folly is banishment from true life into a world where death reigns, where man has to toil painfully in order to survive. This is the world that we know. But before God sends them off into the wilderness of thorns, we are told a fascinating detail. God gives them clothes, garments made out of skin, perhaps to protect them from the elements, or perhaps to relieve their sense of shame. We are not told what the purpose of the gift is. But isn't it somewhat paradoxical that God dresses them in garments of skin, which supposedly were made out of dead animals, in order to help them survive? Ever since, man has continued to apply the same survival strategy in various forms. We use our surroundings to push away death, one day at a time. But we all know that the match of life is rigged. There is nothing in this world that we can put on to protect us from death. The clothes that we wear as protective layers, whether it be medical research, technology, or human rights, can never truly save us. Against death, no worldly clothes or masks are of any help. So, what's the Bible's answer to the inescapable death? Well, it is to put on Christ, to replace our current garments of dead skin with this mysterious person who claims to be both God and man. But perhaps some of you would say that this is simply another fake mask that people are hiding behind. Isn't it better that we remove our masks and live authentically? Perhaps so. However, this objection presupposes that we are true beneath our masks. The idea that we could live authentically if we simply removed our masks is based on the notion that we as human beings actually are true and authentic deep down. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the case. Because if we remove our masks and look in the mirror, being completely honest with ourselves, we are confronted by the warty face of a troll. Man has become a distorted image that has lost its likeness to God. And just as the fairy tale troll represents man's distortion of himself, so does the online troll remind us that we are still wearing masks, maybe more so than ever before. We all have the troll within us. In fact, we are the trolls. We are the ones who wear masks and hide from each other. And the terrible predicament we have put ourselves into is that we can't get rid of the tail. It has become a part of us. And the only thing we're capable of is either hiding it beneath the skirt or wag it shamelessly for all to see. This is why putting on Christ is not another false mask, because the one we are imitating is a true human being, the only truly authentic man there is. The keyboard warrior who put on the garments of the troll becomes in the end one with the troll. But if we put on Christ, the Christian hope is that we will eventually become one with Christ. This means that we won't have to suffer the shame nor hide behind masks, and we won't need any clothes of dead skin either. Instead of runes of magic or trollcraft, which we acquire by sacrificing ourselves for our own gain, like Odin did, we receive the true Word as a gift. The one Word who sacrificed himself for the many. The Christian story is about how God himself, the origin of everything, chose to put on human form, to become true man, in order to give you and me the opportunity to put on him and become like Christ, and thereby restore the image and the likeness of God.